Okay, welcome back. In the last video we created the HTML section for the header. We included the navigation links and also the logo section. So in this video we're going to be working with the CSS file. I'm going to be adding some styles to make sure that the header section looks more like the finished project. So we're going to be working with floats and floating the three divs to the left or to the right. And we'll also be applying some style into the logo and the text area and removing the default bullets from the left hand side of the list items. So to get started, if you go back over to your text editor and open the My Recipe project and go into the style.css. Okay, so I'm going to get started by changing the background color for the website. On the finished website, there's a white background color which is on either side of the body section. So we add that by selecting the HTML and then using the curly brace, opening and closing tags. And then to change the background color, type in background hyphen color. And if you're using brackets or a different text editor with autocomplete, that should make your life a lot easier. So there's a couple of ways we can add colors. We can either select a color from the drop down list. We can use a hashtag and then use a 6-digit hex value such as 6Fs, which is the color white. Or for certain colors we can type in the color. So we can just type in white or we can type in red and make sure that the end of the line has a semicolon. So if you want to check that's working, save that and go over to your project in the browser, and you should now see that that has taken effect on the website. So we want our background color to be white, so I'm going to change that now. Okay, so next we're going to change the background color of the head section, and this is going to be the background of the body section. So go back into the CSS and then type in the body and then use the braces. So again, select the background color. And this time I'm going to use a hashtag to get the hexagon value. And I'm going to give this a value of ED, E6, E6. And then save that. And if you go into the browser and refresh your project, you should see that now we've got the different background color. And the background color for the body will only apply where we've actually got content, rather than be the full height of the web page. And to get the 6-digit hexagon values for colors, we can find them on the W3 Schools website. So we go to W3 Schools and then color picker, and it should be the first link that appears. And you can select a color off the list there, and once you pick a color, for example, it will give you the color reference on the right hand side, and you can put that into your own CSS. Okay, so at present the body section spans the full width of the page, and I just want to change this to make sure that the web page is centralized into the middle of the browser and there's some space on the left and right hand side, and we do this by adding some margin. So we'll look more at margins and paddings as we go through the course, but basically a margin is the space which appears surrounding the div or on the outside of the div, and a padding is the space which applies inside of the div. So now we'll apply some margin to make sure that our full body section is centered. So we'll do that by typing margin, and there's two properties we're going to add. The first one is 0, and that's the margin that appears on the top and bottom. So because we want the web page to be at the very top of the browser and also at the very bottom, we don't want to add any white space there. And the second one is the left and right. I'm going to set this to auto, and auto will automatically set the margin to be equal on left and right, and this will become more apparent in just a moment. And next we'll add the width to be 960 pixels wide. Okay, so let's take a look at the browser, and I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit further. So the body section, you can see with the background color, has been set to 960 pixels wide, and you can see that there's equal margin on the left and right hand side because we set that to be auto. So that now means that the full body section is in the center of the web browser. And the last thing I want to add to the body section is the font family. So if you type in font-family, we can set the font that we want to use throughout the website. So I'm going to have 3 values to this. And the first one is going to be the first choice of text, which is Arial, and then separated by a comma. If Arial is unavailable, the next choice I'm going to put in is Helvetica. And then again separated by a comma. If you just put in a generic sans serif, this will be the fallback font type in case any of the first 2 choices are unavailable. Okay, so now we're going to add some style into the text, and the text were hyperlinks. So the links were surrounded by the A tag, if you remember from the index page. So to style these, type in the A tag, then open up the braces. And to remove the text underline, we can set the text decoration to be none. And also change the font color by typing in color. And I'm going to use the hexagon value of 373535 and the semicolon, and save that. So that's changed the color to the darker grey color and remove the underline. Okay, so next I'm going to move on to the header tags. So we use the HTML5 header tag as a surrounding container. So back into the style. If you just go below the A tags, I'm just going to make some space. I'm going to add a comment in just to section off the CSS. And the way to do a comment in CSS is by doing a / and then a star. And then to close that with a star and then a / again. And then just like the HTML, any text that we put in between these comments will not be read by the web browser. So I'm going to call this the header section. And then select the header tags. So to set the height of the header container, simply type height, and then I'm going to set mine to 150 pixels, and then refresh the browser. So now we've set the header section to be 150 pixels tall. You can see that the content is starting to flow outside of the container, but once we get these 3 elements or the 3 divs placed in line, that shouldn't be a problem. So if you remember before, we mentioned that the margin is the space on the outside of the div. Now I'm going to add some padding to make some space inside of the div, because the text is bunched up right against the top of the container. So type in padding, and you can either set the padding to be all the way around the container, or you can set it to one side. So I'm going to set the padding on the top to be 20 pixels. And you can see there's now a gap at the top of the container. So let's push the content down by 20 pixels. So now we can move on to the navigation or the list items. So by default, the UL or the unordered list has some default padding. So I'm just going to reset that and set that to 0. And then we're going to make the individual list items. We're going to make those in line rather than being stacked on top of each other. And the way to do that is to change the display type by setting display to be inline. So now if we take a look, we should see that the list items are now in line rather than on top of each other. Okay, so next I'm just going to add 10 pixels of padding to the list items just to make them a little bit more spaced out, and also set the font size. So let's do that again in the LI section. So set the padding to be 10 pixels, and I'm also going to change the font size to be 16 pixels. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so next we're going to add a border on the right hand side to separate the 2 list items, just like on the finished project. So you can see that there's a border on the right hand side of the first list item, on the left div and the right div. And the way we do that is we're going to target the header section, and then within the header section we're going to select the list items. But because we only want to add a border to the right of the first list item, we use a pseudo class, and we do that by typing a colon, and then selecting the first hyphen child, and this is the first list item in any list. And the styling we want is the border hyphen right, and there's 3 properties I'm going to apply here. So the border is going to be 1 pixel wide, the line type is going to be solid, there's other things you can add such as dashed or dotted to create different line types, but I'm going to keep mine as solid. And then the color, I'm going to set the color to be 373535 and the semicolon. So let's save that and take a look. So there we go. So we've got a border right now to the right hand side of the first list item. And now we're going to apply some floats to the divs to make sure that the 3 divs appear in line. So we're going to start with the left div. Now the left div, we give a custom class, and we added the class name of left. So if you go into the style, we target a class with the dot or the period, and then the class name. And I'm going to set the width to be 320 pixels wide. And the reason for that is because we've set the width of the body to be 960 pixels wide. So we want this division to be 1/3. I'm going to set the float to be left. And this will move the full div to the left hand side of the page. And then we'll do the same with the right div. So select the right class. And then add the width. We'll make it equal so it's 320 pixels. But this time the float that we need to add is to the right hand side. So let's take a look at that in the browser. Okay, so that's looking more like it. We've got the left navigation and the right navigation on either side. So next we're going to move the navigation a little bit further down from the top, so it's positioned more like the finished website. So I'm going to add some padding to the top to push it down, and also some padding on the left just to keep it away from the edges. So to do that, we'll go up to the left section. So we'll target the left class, and then within the left container we'll select the unordered list. So just keep it away from the left border, add some padding on the left hand side to be 30 pixels, and then to push it down from the top of the container, I'm going to set some padding on the top of 90 pixels. Okay, so that's looking better. So now we can move on to the right div. So we're going to add very similar positioning. We're going to move down the navigation from 90 pixels from the top. And we're also going to keep it 30 pixels from the right hand side to make it equal. But there's just one more thing I need to add. Because this text by default is on the very left hand side of its container, we need to also float the text to the right hand side. So if we go underneath the right class, and then select the right class again, but the unordered list this time, we'll float it to the right hand side of the div, and that should push it over to the far edge, and then we can reference this 30 pixels from the right and 90 pixels from the top, just like the navigation on the left. So padding on the right is going to be 30 pixels, and padding on the top is going to be 90 pixels. Okay, so there we go. So we're nearly finished with the header section. We've just got the logo section now to adjust. So you can see we just need to make sure that the image and the text is in the center of the div. And we'll also add some styling to the text to make it look a little bit more like this. So we'll do that by selecting its ID. In the index page, we give the logo section a ID of logo. So head over to the style.css, and below all the CSS we've put in so far, we'll use the logo ID. So rather than the period that we use for the class, to select an ID, we need to use the hashtag, and then the name of the ID, which was logo. So to make it equal, we'll set the width to be the same as the other containers, as 320 pixels. I'll float this to the left, so it's up against the left navigation, and then we'll use the text align property to pull it into the middle of its container. So text hyphen align, and I'm going to set that to center, and that keeps all the content nicely in the center of its div. So we need to also add a color to the text and also make the font size a little bit bigger. So we'll start with the color of the text, and this is going to be the red color, which has a value of B4 6363. And to make it a little bit bigger, we'll adjust the font size to around 36 pixels and save and take a look. So our logo looks a lot better now, but it's actually pushed out the boundaries of the container. And the reason for that is because there's some default margin which is applied to text by the browsers. So we can remove that in the CSS. And the way to do that is by selecting the logo section again. But this time we'll select the P, which is the text. And we can simply set the margin to have the value of 0. And as soon as we do that, you should now see that the margin which was surrounding the text before has now disappeared, which has allowed the text to move into its place. So there we go, so that's the end of the video, so that's the header section all finished now. So join me in the next video and we'll continue down with the website, and we'll start by adding the HTML for the main content area.